Hey, it's Microcasm. We're gonna play some Sil-Q. I was thinking a little bit about the ending of that last video, and how we tried to add to our perception to see the whispering shadows. And I think what was happening there is I noticed that my torch was a little bit low, and I thought that was fine because I know that the torch is not flickering yet. So when the torch is flickering, it provides no light for a turn or a couple turns, and then it turns kind of back on and back off. But I think actually what I should have done was added another torch. So you can add torches to the torch that you're currently carrying, and it adds additional turns. In Sil, there's sort of this mechanic of not just light levels, like light radius, but light strength. And it's something I'm not 100% clear on. I think what was happening is that although our torch wasn't flickering, because the turn count was low, the strength was a little bit low. And that's why it wasn't overpowering the shadow of the Whispering Shadow. If I had added to the torch, we probably could have seen the Whispering Shadow, exchanged places with it, and then gone up the stairs. Alternatively, perhaps I should have added to my evasion. If I'd added to my evasion, that would have served me a little bit better in the early game, to have a higher evasion. I probably could have gone north. The monster exuding darkness to the north was definitely a night thorn, so I could have just walked around it. I could have tried to find a passageway and escaped. It would have been risky though. It's hard to say. But I'm just trying to think about why I died and how I can do better. That's an important thing to do when you're playing roguelikes. So, as far as this video goes, I did mention the idea of playing another pacifist. But I really do want these videos to be a good introduction for new players, and so to that end I think I'm going to play a combat character. I'm going to press B for new character. Now this is actually my second attempt at recording this video, and if I'm being honest, my first video was a second attempt at recording that video. I'm just sort of learning how as I go. I've never done this before, and what I learned from the last attempt at this video is that I was trying to explain too much all at once. I'm going to try to go a little bit more slowly, explain things clearly, and have these videos be about 30-35 minutes. That's the goal. So what I tried to do last time I did this was go House of Feanor and explain smithing in addition to how combat works. And that is what I think I'm going to cut. Next video we'll play Feanor. We'll go over smithing, which is a super cool mechanic in Sil. It's a lot of fun. But we'll get to it. For now, we'll keep things a little bit more simple. Last video we played Finarfin. This video we'll play Fingolfin. Fingolfin has that nice +3 constitution, as well as a will affinity. There's a lot of really powerful abilities in the will tree, so that affinity will help us out. Press enter. Give ourselves 3 strength, I think 3 dexterity, 5 constitution, 3 grace. Kind of emphasizing constitution here, which is probably a good thing to do as a newer player. And having enough health to make a few mistakes and still survive is important. I'm not saying that this is the best stature distribution, but this is what we're going to do for now. Press enter. We'll give ourselves some melee, some evasion, and I think we will give ourselves some song, 3 points of song, and then a little bit of perception. And a little bit of stealth. That'll use up all our points. Although we want to take will. No, that's good. Okay. Press enter. Press enter, press enter to accept backgrounds, press tab. Alad. Oron. Ladros. I like Ladros. There's a coffee shop named Ladros. It's pretty good. Alright. So, first thing you probably notice is that we have sub-windows this time. So, you can access your sub-windows by going up to the top bar to window. It's outside of my recording region on purpose here, but you go up to window, go to visibility, and click on one of these. We're doing inventory, combat roles, and messages. I like having these ones up They're all useful though. Once you turn them on, then you can reposition them. We've put them down here. They're kind of small, and I feel bad about that because they might be hard to see, but I wanted to keep the main window as the main focus of the video and not get too visually distracted. The sub-windows are very useful, so I definitely recommend using them. One thing you do have to do as well is we're going to have to press escape and go to our options and change our options the way we did at the beginning of last video. These options are not saved globally, they're saved per save file. So like say this character dies, we can press C on the main menu, go to load save file, or save character, reload the character file, even though that character's died. Start a new character with the same name, and it'll have the same settings. That's how you have to do it. I believe Quirk tried to make it a little bit more user-friendly by saving those settings globally, and the Sil code is a little old and messy and hard to work with, so it ended up kind of not being feasible for the 1.5 release. Which is fine, it's something you get used to. So one of the big topics that I want to talk about with this video is how combat works and how damage works. But I'm not going to talk about it quite yet. For now, I'm just going to sort of play the first level. And the reason for that is I want to show that although it's important to know how damage is calculated and how combat works, it's not 100% necessary. Like if you feel like you're getting overwhelmed with information and you don't want to deal with numbers and that kind of thing, you don't have to, at least not right away. It'll help you improve your game later on. But you can see, I mean, on the screen there are damage numbers. You can see I did 11 damage there, 11 damage there, 8 damage there. They're flashing really quickly. You can see how much damage monsters do to you, how much damage you do to monsters. I meant to press O and I pressed 0 there. We're confused because we opened that chest and there was a trap on it, so we'll just wait out that confusion. We'll attempt to attack there we go. No problem. See if these gloves are any good. Man, the gloves are not going to provide anything for us, so we'll just leave them there. You can kind of get by as well with a sort of simplified understanding of how combat works. So it's usually sufficient to know that more strength means more damage if you're wielding a heavy weapon, and a higher attack, like higher melee statistic, will give you more damage, more or less, depending on the weapon, etc. But more or less, that's a simplified way of looking at it, and that's sufficient to to play the game initially. So we're just gonna kill everything on the first floor because we want to be a little cautious. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do if this character survives this video, because I want to play another character next video, so maybe we'll return to this character after that, or I mean we could just do smithing with this character. We might do that. I mean, you don't have to be a Feanorian to do smithing, it's just I have the affinity for it, so that's why I thought I would do that. I completely forgot, so I was going to press tab and go to song. We gave ourselves 3 song points, and the reason is because since we have a song affinity, our first ability in the song tree is free. We're going to take Song of Staunching. This will help us to heal. It basically increases our regen rate, and I think it's pretty good, especially at first. Well, throughout the whole game, but if you have these types of abilities really early, they kind of help you overwhelm the early monsters. Although we just took a lot of damage, I didn't even really realize that. I'm going to sing F. I'm going to step back, let ourselves heal a bit, and then I'm going to attack. Okay, so since we're fighting these mulips, I will discuss how combat is calculated. So you can see down at the bottom, the text is very small, but you can see, hopefully, that there's a little @ symbol, and then it says +8 next to it, and then 28, and then 9 in red, 19, and then a +1, and then a brown H. So that @ symbol is our character. If this were in ASCII, that's what we would look like. The +8 is our combat, our melee score. So we go to press the @ symbol. You can see melee at the top, equals 8. And then there's that 28 number. So how combat works is when you attack, you roll a d20 and you add your melee score. And then the defender, in this case the monster, rolls a d20 and they add their evasion. If your attack roll is higher, the result of your attack roll is higher than the result of their evasion roll, then it's a hit. So you can see that the brown H is how the mulip would look in ASCII, and its evasion is +1. So they rolled an 18 on their d20, +1 is 19, which is pretty high, but we rolled a 20 on our d20, +8 is 28. The difference is 9. And then, so that's a hit, and then to the right, it says 2d8, 12, 8 in red, 4, and then 2d4. So the 2d8 is our damage roll, 12 is what we rolled, the 2d4 is their armor save, and the 4 is what they rolled, and then the 8 is the difference between the two. So we did 8 damage to them. So the question is, why did we do 2d8 damage when, if you look at our equipment, the curved sword does 2d5 damage? And the reason is that you get to add a number of damage sides to your damage dice equal to either your strength or the weight of the weapon, whichever is lower. So the reasoning behind that is that you might have a very heavy weapon. You know, let's say it's 8 pounds. It's a very heavy weapon in this game. But if you're only like, and so that you can use the additional weight of that weapon to deal damage to the monster when you hit with it. But if you're a weak character, you can't really like make use of all that weight, because you're a little bit unwieldy. You're not strong enough to make use of the weight of the weapon. So if it's a 4-pound weapon and you have 3 strength, you get +3 damage sides. If it's a 3-pound weapon and you have 4 strength, it's also +3 damage sides, because it's basically your strength up to the weight of the weapon. But yeah, again, the simplest way of looking at it is your strength or the weight of the weapon, whichever is lower. That's the simplest way. We're going to keep attacking. And there, that's what I wanted to happen. So now you can see we did 3d8 damage instead of 2d8. And so this is the other combat mechanic in the game. So as I said before, the higher your melee, the more damage you tend to do. And the reason for that is because you can get criticals if you roll high on your attack. So we rolled a 9 on our attack, +8 is 17, and they've rolled a 4 on their evasion, +1 is 5, and so the difference is 12. So 12 is a pretty big difference between our attack and their evasion. And so the way you get criticals is by rolling higher than 7 plus the weight of your weapon. So like I said before, our weapon is 4 pounds. I was thinking it was 3, but our weapon is 4 pounds. So 7 plus 4 is 11. So we have to roll more than 11 to get a critical. We rolled 12. And what a critical means is you get +1 dice. That's why it's 3d8. Now you can get double criticals and triple and so on and so on. If we had rolled 22 more than their evasion, we would have gotten a double critical. And so there are really like 2 ways of dealing damage or increasing your damage in Sil. One of them is to increase the number of damage sides. So that's where you would wield a heavy weapon and have a lot of strength. So maybe a warhammer, which does 41 damage, which isn't very much. But it's so heavy, if you have a lot of strength, then you end up doing 4d5 damage, 4d6 damage. So a lot more damage. So you can add to your damage sides with strength. And then the other way to deal damage, or to increase your damage, is to roll additional dice through criticals. And you can affect how criticals work a bit. You press tab and you go to melee. You can take finesse, which I think we'll go ahead and take. And that lowers the base number needed to get critical hits with melee from 7 to 5. So now with our 4-pound weapon, we only need to get a 9 to get a critical. And you can keep bringing it down. You can get subtlety, which lowers the base number by 2 additional points if you're wielding a one-handed weapon with the other hand free. So it's a bit of a sacrifice, but you can get some huge criticals. That orc hasn't seen us, so we're going to close the door. We're going to pick up this bow. We're going to kind of just go into the corner and heal a bit. And we're almost back at full health, no worries. And we'll attack these orcs. I'm going to run away. We don't have any arrows, I don't think. Yeah, so we can't shoot them. We're just going to let them run. It's fine. So if you do something like play an assassin, go down to stealth, go to assassination, gives you a melee bonus against non-alert creatures equal to your stealth score. So you get to basically have your melee score and your stealth score combined. So you can get really big hits on unaware monsters. And if you're using like a dagger, daggers are only 0.5 pounds. So, and you have subtlety and finesse, then you only need to score 3 on your attack to get a critical. Because it's 3 plus 0, because daggers are not even 1 full pound. So every multiple of 3 is another critical. Of course, daggers only do 1d5 damage. So it's a fairly small dice, but you get to roll a lot of them. I've had situations where I've had like a times 16 or times 17 critical. So rolled 16 or 17 d5. Quite a bit. Both ways are reasonable ways to go through the game, and there's sort of different abilities that will reinforce one or the other. We took finesse, but power is the opposite. Gives you a bonus of +1 damage side, but makes it harder to score critical hits. So sometimes you play a game with like a really heavy weapon, and you're basically just trying to get hits at all. You're not worrying about criticals, you're not really worrying about how much more than the evasion you end up getting. You're just trying to get any kind of hit, because all your hits are very powerful, because you have so many damage sides. That's one way of playing. We're going to retreat back here. This orc is confident. Not really sure exactly why. Maybe because there's a group with him, maybe because we're slightly injured. But when they're confident, they'll follow us into a corridor. I just stepped down by accident, so now I'm attacking multiple monsters at once. But it's okay, we'll step back into the corridor. These wolves will always follow you into corridors because they're beasts, so they don't really have a lot of sense of tactics. They'll just do whatever. Run after you. Got a piece of lembas. 2 cloaks. Let's take out this scout, because this scout's just gonna hang out near us and shout and try to attract other monsters. You can see the orc scout shouts for help. When they shout, though, it takes a turn. So if you run after them, you can keep getting turns here and there. You end up taking them out. We'll fight this wolf. And this is a 2-pound cloak. This is a 1.5 wolf. We don't have a cloak, so we'll use this 1.5. It's usually a little bit better to have lighter equipment. It's not that big of a deal, but like I said in the last video, for every 10 pounds of armor you have, you lose 1 point of stealth. And even combat characters can make quite a lot of use of stealth. Sil's, I think, a little bit unusual in that way, where in a lot of roguelikes you step into a room and unless you're a stealthy character, everything sees you and then you just fight. Oh, we never picked up that staff. Let's pick it up. In Sil, it's not really necessarily the case. Monsters don't always see you, especially if you're in the corner. Even if you don't have any stealth, they won't always see you. And you can use that to your advantage, or you can take a little bit of stealth. We're going to use this mail corselet. This is actually a good opportunity to talk about inventory or like equipment numbers, really. So you can see the mail corselet, it says -1, -3, 2d4. It's heavy, so we basically just like blew that out of the water, that the whole concept of having stealth, but having a corselet's nice, so this early, so I'm just gonna put it on. As you can see, it says -1, -3, 2d4. So -1 is -1 to hit. So because the corselet is pretty heavy, makes it a little bit harder for us to attack with our weapon. So it brings down your melee score by -1. The -3 is -3 to your evasion. Again, because it's a heavy piece of armor, it makes it harder for you to dodge. And then 2d4 is your the added to your armor roll. Now, it's worth remembering that having that -3 is kind of dangerous. I think it's worth it for the armor, but monsters can also get critical hits. So having that -3 doesn't just mean that they're more likely to hit you, it means they're more likely to crit you. So they can do quite a bit more damage that way. But as you can see, we're pretty much overpowering everything right now. We are going to pick up this longsword. I wanted to play with the longsword or like a great sword or a bastard sword in this game, because they're kind of like more balanced weapons, a little bit more mid-range, and that'll let us engage with both the damage size and the critical mechanics and talk about both of them. You can see this longsword, it says +0, 2d5 +1. So we don't get any to hit, it's +0, but we get that +1 at the end, and that +1 is +1 to your evasion. And the thinking there is that you're going to be using weapons like swords to parry the attacks of your opponents, and so that's represented by an added +1 to your evasion. We're actually going to back up and let these orcs come to us, and then we're going to fight them here. So there's this like tension in Sil between fighting in corridors and fighting out in the open. In general, in roguelikes, you'd like to fight in corridors because then you fight one-on-one. But as we've seen, a lot of monsters don't like to follow us into corridors because they know that they don't want to be overwhelmed one-on-one. They want to overwhelm you with their numbers. And you could see like this orc, it moved so that they are now on either side of us. And the reason it did that is because monsters get a bonus to their attack according to the number of other monsters on the other side of you. I believe it helps if they're exactly on the other side. I'd have to look at the manual again to remember the specifics, but more or less they just want to surround you because they get a melee bonus. So you might want to move up into the right there. Well, that orc fled, so that's good. But you might want to like just be cognizant of where monsters are in relation to where you are and what combat bonus that's giving them. Our torch is flickering, so we'll add our other torch. Take out that orc. There's the scout. Let's take him out so he doesn't call anyone else. These mad thorns can confuse you, but they shouldn't be a problem. The mulip got away. I'm going to mostly clear this floor so you can see these orcs attempting to surround us. I'm going to sing Staunching, and I'm going to go up here. So I was actually just about to take one step to the north, and then they wouldn't be able to surround me anymore. So that would be beneficial. But the problem is that I haven't been to the north yet, so it's kind of like unknown darkness. And your biggest enemy, I feel like in a lot of roguelikes, is not necessarily the monsters on the screen, but the monsters that could be in the darkness. So if we move to the north, another group could come down and surround us. So I think instead we'll go down here, even if we take a couple of hits, and we'll fight from the doorway. We might have to fight three of them at once, but at least we're not being surrounded. And I mean, I knew that we would be strong enough to take them out. I've been picking up consumables here and there, and we will attempt to identify those in just a second. Serpents always have a lot of armor. You can see down at the bottom, 4d4. Actually, we'll press R for recall. It has 2d4 health and 4d4 armor. So very little health. I mean, it could have 2 health if it rolled low on its health. But it could roll up to 16 for its armor, so it's good to keep in mind about how to take out serpents. We struck the skeleton there by pressing Control and then the direction. You can also press backslash in the direction. If you're playing on Angband.live, that's actually good to know. Control doesn't work on Angband.live, you have to use backslash. Similarly, we've been pressing 5 to move multiple tiles in one direction, 5 in a or sorry, not 5, pressing shift in a direction to move multiple tiles in that direction. If you do play on Angband.live, which I recommend, I think it's fun to play, you know, other people can watch and help you out, or you can watch other people, or just being sort of part of that community. And so yeah, if you do play on Angband.live, in order to move multiple tiles in one direction, you have to press period in then that direction. And that works in the download version as well. Got a flask of oil. That's good. We don't have a lantern yet, but we'll find one at some point. It's an orc warrior. They're a little bit stronger than the orc soldiers. Pick up that dagger. Something breathed fire from the left side of the screen there, so that's a red serpent. And we're going to move up here so we can retreat if we have to. One thing that's funny about things that breathe fire, or blue serpents breathe like a frost breath, is that they're not really cognizant of other monsters. So I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that if you have like an orc between you and a breath monster, like a red serpent, it will try to breathe through the orc to hit you, and it will hurt the orc. That's kind of funny. And try to get that to happen. We have 2 special items, and we haven't done anything with them yet. So let's equip the dagger. 2 weapon fighting. That's not bad. That gives us the ability to weapon fighting. The dagger of accompaniment is what it's called. So you can wield a one-handed weapon in your offhand for an extra attack. We might do that. Early in the game, it's pretty good. I've never really used it later in the game, so it may still be good later in the game, but I personally have not used it. There's quite a bit that I haven't done in Sil, actually. I have a lot of goals that I want to get to, and hopefully I can get to some of those on camera. I think that'd be fun. One of them is to do a really heavy smith build, by the way. Speaking of smithing earlier in the video. So there's a red serpent here, and there's a lot of thrall masters. These guys can whip to disarm you. And they're not too strong. Plus, I would like to free their... Well, you can't really free the slaves, but I'd like to, you know, in my imagination, free the slaves. We're going to press S for song and F for staunching. It's hard to do damage. The red serpent dies. Yeah, you can see it happen right there. The blue serpent breathes frost. The red serpent dies. We didn't do damage to them because their armor is too good. Like, we rolled 1. Oh, because we're using the dagger. I forgot to change my weapon. That's fine. We did 1 damage, and they did 11 on their armor save. But then the blue serpent breathed frost and killed the red serpent. Let's use that spear. It doesn't say what the spear is. there are slaying weapons in Sil. So, kind of like Sting in Lord of the Rings that glowed when orcs were nearby. There are weapons that will glow on the ground when the type of monster that that weapon slays is nearby. So it might be orcs and trolls. It may be wolves. Wolves and something, I can't remember what the other one is. Or maybe humans. Or maybe the demon Balrog monsters, which are called Rocco in this game. Or Rauco, not really sure. We're going to use the Great Sword. Because again, that's... how heavy is that Great Sword? 6 pounds. That's a little heavy. We want to have something that we can get both crits and damage sides. I think we'll go back to the longsword for that purpose. I guess I used a potion of slowing by accident. I meant to use P for longsword. That's okay. We'll drop the Dagger of Accompaniment. I don't think we're going to use that. We'll drop the Cursed Sword. Oh, the spear did identify itself. Let's use the short bow, drop the other short bow. Short bow 1.5. Actually, we'll use the 2-pound short bow. Ranged combat, the way that the amount of damage you do is calculated is the same as close combat, basically. So the weight of the bow or your strength, whichever is lower, same kind of thing. There is the difference that the distance that you can shoot an arrow depends on the number of damage sides. So a heavier bow with more strength will shoot further. So let's look at what that spear does. We're going to press X and then O. Aglos. Branded with frost. That's really cool. It does extra damage and wielded with both hands. Let's use that. That's super cool. There are a lot of artifact weapons in Sil. It's really unusual to find one this early. And it's really unusual to find one that has a frost brand or a fire brand. Any one of the brands. So you can see down there in the combat window it says 3d14. So just to reiterate, the Iglos is 3 pounds. It does 1d11 damage. So since we're 3 strength, we can make use of all 3 of those pounds. So it ends up doing 3d. It does 14-sided dice for its attack. We rolled a critical, so it should be 2d14, but it was 3d14, and that's where the brand comes in. If a monster is not resistant to the type of brand, so they're not resistant to frost in this case, you get an extra dice. I don't think that many monsters are resistant to cold. Although since it's so unusual to get a cold branded weapon, I'm not really sure. One thing we can do with these orcs here is we could get Song of Challenge, which causes monsters like orcs to attack you even if it's not in their best interest. I don't think we're going to do that, but I used to do that all the time because it's kind of annoying to deal with things like archers, for instance. They're always running away from you. It says enemies with ranged weapons will close to melee range. That doesn't always happen. They will sometimes close to melee range, but other times they just won't shoot. They'll just kind of stare at you. But that's still useful. We kind of have to corner ranged monsters. You get used to how it works. So you can corner them and take them out. So we are getting around to 30-something minutes. We hardly got anywhere at all, but that's okay. I think we explained what I wanted to get to more or less. But I'll try to get to 2 more topics. Let's add... Took finesse. So we have a polearm. We could take polearm mastery. It gives you +2 to attack with polearms. And lets you set to receive in a free attack. That means if you press 5 and a monster moves towards you, you get a free attack on that monster. One of the coolest things about Sil is thinking about what you have or what you want to do, and putting together synergies. So we found this cool spear, which means I kind of want to take Polearm Mastery. Seems like fun to make this spear our main weapon. Maybe it's not the best weapon in the game, but I don't know. It seems pretty good to me. And we could take Polearm Mastery, get that +2 to attack, and then maybe we could take Knockback. So Knockback, if you you do a contested roll between your strength and your opponent's constitution, and you might knock them back 1 tile. And so when you combine that with Polearm Mastery, it means that you can wait a turn, they walk towards you, you get a free hit, you knock them back, and so you got a free hit and they didn't get to hit you. They just ended up exactly where they were. So it can happen over and over. You just keep getting free hits on them until they die. Doesn't always happen. And it's not that useful in like big crowd fights, but it's a cool synergy, and that's the fun of it, is finding synergies. There's a lot of interesting builds you can do in Sil. And I still find people playing builds that I never would have thought of. I think we will do that. We'll take Polearm Mastery. We haven't taken anything from Evasion. We'll take Crowd Fighting. But you know, the other thing we can do is take Impale. Use a Polearm or Greatsword. You can strike through or past opponents to attack an opponent behind them. Its Polearm Mastery is a prereq, but we just bought that. It's good to sort of balance your points across different trees to some extent, because the first ability is only 500 points. I think we'll take Crowd Fighting. Oh, we do want to add... Oh, we really want to get some Will. Because we have the Will Affinity. How much Will can we give ourselves? We might do that first. Give ourselves 4. And then in the Will tree, we'll take Formidable. Slaying enemies in melee scares all other enemies who see it. So this will give a little bit of introduction to like morale. You can build a character around morale too if you want. Like Majesty will lower monster morale. Song of Elbereth causes fear. I had a character recently that was very morale based, and I took sprinting, so I could run monsters down and then charge. Gives you an addition to your attack if you move towards a monster in your last turn. So I had like a heavy axe and I would just run down monsters after making them run away. It was a lot of fun. So one of the last things I wanted to talk about was you can step into alert thralls, and they ask for a light source. We'll give them a torch, and then they'll give us something in return. Give us a mottled herb. And that kind of brings us to the last thing. So I want to talk a little bit about item identification. Let's go down. Got another staff. It's probably a little bit late to be attempting to identify things. While we're here, this is good. So sword spiders are very dangerous. They did 3d9 damage to it, or that was 3d9 attack. So you got to be careful. We're going to step back, and then we're going to step down. They don't follow you around corners. And in fact, a lot of, I think spiders in general don't follow you around corners. Archers also don't pursue you, so we can close that door and just like sing staunching and get our HP back. Then we can run out, take a bunch of hits, but we've got enough armor to deal with it. Okay. We'll kill him, and then now we're in a good position to start identifying some stabs. So the ideal way to identify stabs, as best as I know at least, is to have a monster in your line of sight, to have an open door, and a staircase. And the reason for that is that those are things that stabs can affect. So let's use with U, the letter U, the ivory staff. Your weapon freezes your foe, +1 damage die. So that is a staff of self-knowledge that tells you some information about the things that are affecting your character. It's kind of like a identification, but not quite. It's like a soft identification. So you see Oak Staff. Staff of Summoning. Right, yeah. So Staff of Summoning makes monsters come up or downstairs. So now we've got a lot of archers in the room. But I think we're still fine. They fled. Before he flees entirely, we'll use the beach staff. And that was imprisonment. So that's why you want to have an open door. Imprisonment closes and locks doors. We picked the lock there. We identified some of our staffs. That's excellent. We don't need summoning. It's not really that useful. I mean, you might want to summon some monsters to fight them or something. Sometimes as a pacifist, I've summoned monsters. Right. Just to look at them, because you get XP for seeing monsters. You can hide out in a corner or summon a couple monsters, get experience for seeing them. But it's a little cute, if you know what I mean. It's probably not strictly necessary. It felt a little dangerous, but we're okay. I don't really know the best way to identify potions. I know that there are some potions that you're not necessarily going to see the effects of. I know murky brown potions are always orcish liquor, which is a reference to in the Two Towers when the orcs give Merry and Pippin some brown liquor and it makes them feel better. Orcish liquor heals you a bit but also stuns you, which reduces some of your stats temporarily. The most common type of potion is antidote, so it's usually best to get yourself poisoned a bit by some harmless enemy like a spider. Not a sword spider, but a poisonous spider. And then drink that potion, because then it'll identify for you. Because again, you have to see the effect. So probably the brown potions are antidote potions. I think I'll not drink them, because that's probably what they are. I'll drink the emerald potion. It says auto-inscribe this potion type. I'm not going to do that. I mean, I should. That's the optimal play, is to auto-inscribe. But I'm not going to. I just don't really like to deal with that. We're going to use the other potion. So Esgalduin is one of the other potions that adds to our voice. And I think it might have some other characteristic. It's not the most useful potion. We'll use, I mean, it's not bad depending on the type of character. Let's eat that piece of dark bread, and we'll use the mottled herb. It was an herb of terror. When you drink an herb of terror, you do a will check to see if you become terrified. If you're terrified, you can't attack, but you also move faster, so you might want to have some herbs of terror if you're a pacifist, because it'll help you run away. We got a little bit of experience for identifying all that stuff. But I think we'll hold it off as far as using that experience. I believe now that I've talked about identification, I've discussed everything I want to talk about in this video. This character is still alive, and I think they're doing pretty well. I'm real excited to have found this cool spear. So I think I will want to continue this character. But I'm not going to do that now. We'll do that in the next video. This video ended up being 45 minutes, almost exactly as long as the first attempt at doing this video. Much longer than I wanted it to be, even though I didn't discuss smithing. But hopefully I discussed all these mechanics in a clear way. If you do have additional questions, feel free to ask in the comments. And yeah, I think that's it for now. We'll do a Noldor Feanor next time. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.